do we need? And is the greater responsibility at this point in time with the president?
No doubt the president bears the greatest responsibility, because many years from today, when the history of this country is written, they will not remember Kagwanja or William Ruto or Raila Odinga. They will say if the country collapses, they will say it collapsed during the reign of Uhuru Kenyatta. So he bears the greatest responsibility. But in order to sort out our problems, we must appreciate seemingly small little things. And Kagwanja here, I hope he's now listening. One, when you say, let us move on, Professor,
yes,
a significant part of this country are posing the question, to where? We are not moving. That is a serious question that must be addressed. They are saying we are not moving. They are asking for the first time, where are we moving to? We are not moving with you. Where are we moving to? Let's stop. Let's talk. And that's serious, I've said. Number two, and I agree with Professor Kagwanja, there must be peace building. But in a context such as ours, simple, you cannot have peace without justice. There are people who are crying out for justice in this country. Within a short span of 3 or so months, Kenyans, remarkably perhaps from one community or so, have been killed by the police. And many other atrocities have been committed against the people of this country. Such a people are saying we cannot talk peace before we talk about justice. So, yes, we must move on, but let's stop and agree on a roadmap. Let's see where we are moving.
So is there any legitimacy or validity in saying we cannot talk peace before justice? Because again, we are going outside the confines of the law. Two wrongs don't make a right.
You cannot tell me when you are talking justice, you are getting out of the law. In fact, you'll be so deep into law.
But when you use lack of peace
the problem will be there will be too much law when you are talking justice.
Yes, but when you bring in lack of peace to bring in justice, isn't that...
What I'm saying is this. There are people who are saying, let's move on. And I'm saying a significant part of this country are saying we are not moving. Where are we moving? Let's stop and have a roadmap. Then there are people who are talking about peace, and I'm telling you, a significant part of this country are saying, let's talk justice.
Now,
then peace will naturally flow. You get what I'm saying? That once you talk justice, peace flows naturally.
All right, Professor Kagwanja.
What Professor Manyora is talking about is fully taken care of by our Constitution. Now, it is possible to emotionalize things, to create movements, quote unquote, out of what you call grievances, and seek solution outside the Constitution. And when those who are hired by the state or the sovereign to enforce the law go to do on their best to do what they are supposed to do to make things work, then you begin to accuse them of injustices, and therefore you produce a third movement about justices. At the same time, the church will be talking about peace. So we proliferate our country with all these manner of movements and protests and so on, and then we create the kind of crisis.
When you pump a bullet through the head of a kid,
let's finish this.
Professor Manyora, allow him to finish. Allow him to finish.
He symbolizes the anarchy that we are having. The anarchy, for him, is the anarchy of thought reproducing itself in the anarchy of politics. If this is the kind of people that are devised, it's not a wonder that we have the kind of anarchy we have. Let me say, we have a solution. President Kenyatta must not conceive himself or the country as in crisis, because our Constitution is intact. He swore to protect the Constitution. He must go on protecting the Constitution. At the same time, implementing the Constitution in a manner that the whole country pursue the fair play. That is a responsibility. The whole country perceives that there is justice for everyone. And that is the challenge of every leader, from the beginning to now and into the future, that every leader must ensure there is a sense of justice in that country, but within the law. That's why laws were brought to us. Two, our constitution process and our political dispensation is still a work in progress. Let us not think that we finished at 2010. We are going to have processes that are going to improve on our constitution. That is what Governor Mutua was talking about this morning, that we now need to think about within the confines of our constitution and legitimate processes, what can we do in order to bring that sense of inclusivity? that sense of justice, that sense of ownership. And I think the first thing we need to do immediately is to think about the political opposition. The idea of winner takes all must not be seen that in order that there is no winner take all, there must be power sharing. That is unconstitutional. What is constitutional in democracies is that power sharing takes place within the political process. In our case, we need to build a strong opposition where the leader of opposition has a position in parliament and elsewhere, where he has a shadow cabinet that is looked after by the government in whichever way you want to display it, so that you may not have the full of, which is executive, but you have at least what you want. At the same time, within our country, as far as we are treating citizens, because citizens vote as individuals. If you vote against me or vote for me, you are exercising your democratic right. Therefore, justice must be seen to be countrywide, irrespective of our political formations.
Okay.
And it is possible to practice that. Finally, let me put this. We must punish political sabotage of whatever nature. If a police officer pumps a bullet into a child's head, as Manyora claims, that police officer must be individually culpable. Don't demonize our institutions in the name of making political marriages. If a citizen like myself go to the petrol station and buy a jerrycan of fuel and go and burn a police truck, or go and find an ordinary woman selling her bananas and plunge a knife into her and take away the bananas and go brandishing a sword in the air full of blood that you have taken the banana by force, that citizen needs to be taken into account. So it's not, so when you begin to talk about individually, so when you begin to talk about justice as a collective problem in a constitutional dispensation, this is what is basically confusing us. Because you want to create, you want to create movements out of the process so that you can mobilize resources.
All right.
Let me explain.
It is not necessary.
Yes, Professor Manyora, I need to bring in mine as well.
I think Kagwanja doesn't seem to understand what
I do understand. Why
what
do you
I'm
think so?
saying is very simple. We have a simple problem in this country which you can sort out. Let's try and sort it out. Let's not try to make it complex by like you closing your eyes to the reality.
That we need to appease Odinga.
That we do, it is not a question of appeasing anybody. It's not even a question of sharing what. I have said, other than the presidency, when we put everything on the table, it includes, because I didn't want to go into the details in the interest of time, it will include whether we need to relook at our constitution, re-engineer it here and there and address some of the gaps we have. It will include perhaps a fresh election and how that, everything is on the table. But when we talk about the issues you are talking about that are bring about...
But on the fresh election, since he's talking about on an intervention point, we have an election. We have an election on the 9th, which is a Tuesday, the 9th of August 2022. That is not defined by him or myself.
It's a constitution.
It is defined by our constitution.
But let's try and bring the professors to order also.
Yes, please. Bring us to order, please.
I think in all fairness, and perhaps the whole of this debate has ended on a good part, where Professor Kagwanja has pointed out that our constitutional development journey is still on.
It's a process.
It's a process. And what I want to reiterate is we can't be that country which at a certain point cherry picks sections of the Constitution and say they are final. And therefore, everybody must only live by that section. But when it suits us, we say, no, it is a journey. We need to walk. So on that, I want to agree with Professor that we all need to understand we are in a process of turning ourselves into a constitutional democracy. And it is a process. There will be frailties, there will be problems. But the second part of affirming that constitution is about justice as fairness. And I like that he has come to the issue of holding people to account. That a police officer who kills Baby Pento must be held to account as an individual. Yeah. And the system must not find reasons to cushion that police officer in any way. Just like a citizen who violates the law must be held to account as an individual. Communities must not be punished collectively for a problem of an individual.
Correct.
And if we begin to move away from this collective criminalization, then we are living within the constitutional principles.
Correct.
And two, that if we begin to understand that our society has been unequal, and the inequality has been because of political decisions as opposed to natural phenomena. And therefore, political decisions must seek to ensure that we have equity. That if they continue to reinforce inequality, then the Constitution, the constitutional spirit will be violated, and therefore people will not be forced to play within the Constitution. Three, that we continuously need to understand that where people disagree with us, they are not criminals. They are not unpatriotic. Because the narrative that is emerging, that anybody that disagrees with the big narrative of the state, that person is responsible, that person is unpatriotic, that in itself.
But important to add, within that disagreement, there is rules and regulations and the law that...
and when people disagree within the confines of the law, they shouldn't be criminalized. Because when you do, because you are using sections of the law to ensure that they do not disagree with you, what else is left for them? You begin to push them to be outside the rule of law.
All right.
So it is the criminalization, collective criminalization, in fact, that we must stem. Because when you look at the number of people who've been killed from April up to now, there is a pattern that emerges. When you look at people we think are criminals, I'm using the word we think, because the big chunks where there were protests, we have not had 1,000 people taken to court and have been found to be criminally responsible to the things we said they were doing. Yet, we have condemned regions, and that narrative continues.
Okay.
So poor people, yesterday I saw people getting onto the streets from all over the country, and for different reasons. In some regions, there was heavy deployment of police, and people were battered. In some regions, people were left to do what they wanted. That criminalization is what I'm saying is the problem. Let's leave the Constitution to the whole, even though it is still a project. Let's not cherry pick.
Okay.
And people must
allow me to bring in Professor Manyora, because I want us to get closing comments so that you can comment on that, but also give us your closing comments.
I want to say something simple. You see, when you have a state where people are being killed by the police,
and the police are being killed by the people.
We are getting, there.
Put it that way.
And a lot of bad things are happening. There are two things I just want to point out, then I stop talking. One, let's not look at this as statistics. These are human beings. Human life is important. These are fathers, they are mothers, they are everything. It is an only child you have, Pendo and so on and so on. Then what is the problem, Mike? The state is responsible. Why? The state is responsible for creating a state in which even if a policeman were to kill, I wouldn't be like a Gwanja. Isolate that police for prosecution. You put that policeman in a state of chaos. You actually have dehumanized that policeman. When you push a policeman into a civilian population, like in a slum, with all the tear gas and the stones flowing, you put him in a state where he shouldn't even be held responsible for what he did. Sometimes a police could even shoot somebody. Do you know if he got a stone hit? Therefore, once we dehumanize people, we shouldn't even blame them for what ensues. We should blame the man at the command center. Why are you sending the police when there are peaceful demonstrations instead of the police going there to ensure there is peaceful and orderly conduct of the demonstrators? Why do you throw tear gas? We've just seen here the second news item when you started in Jivanji. Not even 30 people. Just in a discussion that becomes a little heated,
Okay.
Did you see tear gas thrown there? These are the kind of stupid things I'm saying. Once you do that, you throw tear gas, you shoot in the air, you come with those ugly things that we used to see in Soweto, in South Africa, then you incite populations into actions that may lead to regrettable incidents.
We need to wind up. Professor Kagwanja, your closing comments, and hopefully on a positive solution.
No, of course, first, positive solution. First, we don't have a crisis in this country. We may have political disagreements, which are normal. All elections across the world are divisive. They are divisive. There is no election that I know of where people come out laughing and shaking hands. Just like in a rugby match, and there are bitterness after the losses. The maturity of a democracy, the maturity of a people is how you handle that process and how you emerge into that process. Moving to the future as a country and as a people, we need to begin thinking about how we are going to make our transitions peaceful and not expensive to our democracy and to our society. And making our transition certain, not uncertain. And one way of doing that is to find a way where losers will accept losses gracefully and winners will accommodate the losers. Because we are one community. That's one thing we need to do. We do not need power sharing. We do not need caretaker governments. We don't need a new election until 9th of August 2022 because the founders of the current constitution wanted us to have some predictability. Now, we need to pay tribute to this constitution because irrespective of what we have gone through, this country has demonstrated resilience. I know people have lost lives. I know communities have suffered in one way or another, but our community has emerged with total resilience and as intact. Now, what we need to begin thinking about is how do we cushion our society from these uncertainties? Now, and that must be done within the confines of our constitution, and constitution must be changed. Okay. If it has to be changed, within the confines that it itself prescribe as the instrument of changing it. I don't mind Boniface Mwangi, my friend, and others painting donkeys and sheep and going pigs to parliament and petitioning parliament to make a certain adjustment. I have a problem when a Kenyan turns a tribe or a community into a weapon, and then you start doing what Maina is doing here, that all the people killed from this community, all the people done this, and yet you're not blaming the leader who turned a community into a weapon in his political agenda.
I need to get closing comments from Maina. Your closing comments.
The truth is that Kagwanja is selective with truth. All politicians in Kenya have instrumentalized tribe. That's why Uhuru Kenyatta runs to Nyeri, to Nyahururu, and Nakuru, and we call it his base. That's why Odinga runs to Migori and everything, and Ruto runs to Bomet. So there isn't a politician that is blame-free in this question, whether that politician is the one Kagwanja supports or not. So that's the first point we must make. If we want to be truthful and fair to ourselves, is that our politicians have instrumentalized ethnic groups.
So they should stop that.
And they should stop. And it is not about Odinga stopping. It is about Odinga, Uhuru, Ruto, and all politicians understanding that we are far better discussing issues than them running into ethnic enclaves and selling them to the highest bidder. The second part is that it is not illegal to form pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions. That constitution still allows. So even though that may be called power sharing or nusu mkate for purposes of bastardizing it, but our constitution allows pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions. It does not prescribe how those coalitions may be formed. And therefore, politicians who choose to want to go into that discussion must also not be delegitimized.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Part 3 is that where there are facts that 10 people have been killed. And because as a country we've made a big mistake, I was born to parents who were born in Kakamega, but I was born in Nairobi. But my ID has to say I come from Kakamega for purposes of getting an ID. And therefore, when I die and people put my ID on my torso as an identification, everybody sees that a Kakamega person has died.
But your name is minor.
Yes. But when those 10 people who have died are from Kakamega, because that is the registration, that is not politicizing it.
Okay.
Because it is a fact.
It is a fact.
So we need to be able to say they died, yet they ought not to have died, and life matter. And therefore, we begin to seek to redress why did they have to die.
Okay.
Otherwise, as a country, we begin to gloss over it and find reason. It's only in Kenya where we find reason for somebody losing life.
All right.
In other democracies that we want to measure ourselves to, life matters. And any
Every
life
single
lost
life matters.
must be,
Absolutely.
people must be.
Gentlemen, because of time, we'll have to wind it up right there. It's now 20 minutes after 8. Thank you very much, Henry Maina, CEO for Article 19, Professor Peter Kagwanja, and Professor Herman Manyora for joining us this morning on The Political Point. And, well, still seeking solutions as to what Kenya needs to ensure that we become one nation and continue as one nation. For now, we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, I'll be speaking to the government spokesman. That's Eric Kiraithe. And, of course, there are many questions that we'd like to pose to him, and feel free to participate. Let me know if you have any questions for him. You can send them via Twitter. The Twitter handle is at Michael G. Gitonga, and I'll see whether, as time allows, we shall pose those questions to him. We take a short break. When we come back, we have Eric Kiraithe with me in studio.